It's the Final Word Daily. Adam Collins and Daniel Norcross standing in for Jeff, who's probably still asleep. He's in Canada, and this game finished in the space of about 70 minutes this morning, but you still only got 30 seconds to tell us what happened.
New Zealand should have done a lot better with the ball under slate grey skies. They had 15 overs to bowl England out, or at least to get enough runs in the bank for a new ball to bowl them out. They have failed to achieve either of those objectives, as Foakes particularly held the innings together with Root playing some rather dashing and flashy shots. It was a terrific textbook performance from the former England captain, who brought up his 10,000th run and in so doing became, we think, more of which anon, the youngest man ever to do it. Why do we think? Well, find out. Stay tuned. It'll all become clear. And England won, by the way.
By 5 wickets, with Foakes making 32 not out, Root making 115 not out, a partnership of 120
well done.
By the time it was done, looking through my margin there. Root came out today, scored from the first ball he faced, looked to put pressure straight back on the New Zealand bowlers. They started with Southey from the nursery end down here. They went straight to Jamieson, bolt up the other end. They tried to get the ball swinging, but it just didn't. And you'd think it would. When you look above here, you think, gee, it's leaden skies and all the other cliches about Lords. But maybe it was too chilly for the ball to swing. Maybe they were just knackered. They bowled a lot yesterday, and they bowled a lot over the previous couple of days. Whatever it was, it never looked threatening for New Zealand. At no point did England look under pressure, with Foakes and Root doing as they pleased. And as you say, they finished it off in 14 overs.
Yeah, there was absolutely nothing. I mean, the ball didn't move off the straight, did it? It didn't swing. I think Jared Kimber told us that after the 55th over, there was 0.6 degrees of swing. There had been 2.2 degrees between the 30th and the 55th on average. So you just saw that these balls this season haven't been great in English county cricket. These are reputedly a bit better, we've been told, whatever that quite means. But they weren't a lot better, and they seemed to die throughout this match. If you could bat into the 43rd, 44th over, it suddenly became much, much easier. And so you got this weird contrast throughout the match, didn't you?
Yeah.
Between, oh crikey, a wicket could fall any minute. I think, what was the average number of balls? I think each partnership was lasting fewer than 60 balls, and much fewer. Right. It was more like 6 overs, I think. The average partnership was 6 overs until we got the crazy partnership between Blundell and Mitchell that was superb. And what was brilliant about that partnership was that they held it together for about 20 overs while it really was a little bit testing, and then they cashed in. England looked like they were going to throw that away yesterday when Ben Stokes kind of got himself out, and New Zealand were only 1 wicket away from an incredibly fragile tail. But the ball, well, it was just dead. There's nothing on the seam. There was no shine. There was no movement. But I don't want that to take away from the way Root and Foakes in particular batted.
And let's deal with Foakes initially. You're a Surrey man. You've watched Foakes since he was a youngster when he moved to the club. He's only played now 1 test match in England. I mean, he made his test debut nearly 4 years ago. To come here, to get that opportunity, belatedly by 12 months, remembering he would have played against New Zealand in this series in 2021, if not for that hamstring tear at an inopportune time. I don't think it's unreasonable to say that Foakes, with a couple of low scores to start this series, might have found himself on the scrap heap yet again. There have been so many wicket keepers turned to. Johnny Bairstow seems to be in favour right now, batting at 5. Many think he does his best work at 7 with the gloves. So Foakes needed runs, was what it all boils down to, and it was a great opportunity. I think we said that on comms yesterday when he walked out, even though he was being used as a bit of a quasi-night watchman for Joe Root, that if he stayed through to the end, and he did, 120 run stand with Root, that it would do wonders for his confidence and his place in the pecking order, and so it has.
Yeah, I still think he's in danger, though, because of England's tail. I think, a couple of years ago, England had a glut of all-rounders, and Foakes would have been ideal in that situation, batting at 7 with someone like Moeen coming in at 8, Chris Woakes at 9. He would have been perfect for that. But unfortunately, he's still got those 4 tail enders. And I think this is because there's a little confusion about the way Ben Foakes bats. He's actually a very accomplished batter. He reminds me a little bit of BJ Watling in style, insofar as he doesn't look to hit every ball for 4. He's content to take 2 runs, and the 2 is the most underrated shot in cricket. We saw one today. It was a perfect example. He reached out to a ball that wasn't a half volley and guided it between cover and extra cover, and they ran 2. Now, too many England batters, and actually batters around the world, see that ball and they're trying to smash the cover off it. In so doing, you can get the edge or you can get the drag back or anything of that kind. Foakes is not flashy. Foakes will not score quick runs with the tail. He won't go, right, I'll take control. I mean, you saw James Anderson taking a single off the last ball of an over when Foakes was at the other end in the first innings. So that's where there's going to be a little bit of a perception problem. I personally think that he's a very accomplished technician with the bat. His first-class record speaks to that. He averages around about 40.
Averages 100 this year.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Well, this season, rather.
This season, yeah. So, I still think that we get a bit excited by what Johnny Bairstow could do when he crunches fours, or what Josh Buttler was able to do when he smashed the six over the rugby stand in Leeds, things like that. And Ben Foakes is never going to do that. So England have got to decide whether they want to support that. I think what would be helpful for them would be if they can find a bowler who can bat a bit more, and they might be looking at Craig Overton coming back in the side in some way, because he just gives them a bit more solidity after the fall of the sixth wicket.
And before we dive into Joe Root Love, New Zealand, we saw the door shut in the dressing room on the balcony. Jared Kimber picked up on that on our commentary. That's very unusual after a test match. They're clearly doing some soul searching. I don't think it's too big a leap to say they might be on the wane, New Zealand. I mean, they did so well here to stay in the test match after being 45 for 7, and England none for 59 in response when they were 56 for 4 the second time around, and they were careering towards sort of a 2.25 day defeat. To drag it back the way they did with Blundell and Mitchell was admirable, and the way that Jameson bowled especially, and occasionally Bolton Southey likewise. But Ajaz Patel didn't come off, only bowled 2 overs in the test match. I feel sorry for him, because both of them were to Stokes with the short boundary on the grandstand side, and he took advantage of that, and in the end he wasn't turned to today. But there seems to be, more broadly now, a trend with New Zealand. Since they won the World Test Championship final, they're just not converting. They're not getting into good positions as often as they were in the previous couple of years. Yeah,
I think that's absolutely right. They lost a game to Bangladesh and then bounced back. I still think they're a better side, man for man, than England.
They should be beating England, really.
Yeah, they should.
Honestly.
They're a more experienced side. They've got stronger batters, and their bowling attack is a lot more flexible. They've got Matt Henry and Neil Wagner waiting in the wings. I'd be interested to see which, or maybe even both of those two, come in, because I thought that Bolt looked a little undercooked in this game. And look, let's not forget, Southey and Bolt are not young, and neither's Neil Wagner for that matter. But they missed, strangely enough, the one they missed most, I would say, was Colin de Grandon. Because yesterday he would have bowled over after over yesterday. They would have rotated the seamers from this end of the nursery.
He would have played as the de facto spinner.
He would have done, and I think he'd have gone for 2 and over. He's very hard to get away. He'd probably have got Stokes out a second time, because Stokes was never going to try and let him settle. But
had he got Stokes, the test would have been over yesterday. Probably.
I think in all probability, but they miss him, and I don't think he's going to be back in time for Nottingham, because he's got this sore heel.
Well, they said that this is quite, we were talking to Craig McMillan, weren't we, about the fact that they now go through the scan process, and it's a hard injury to come back from. So maybe they might shuffle Henry Nicholls back into the top 5 where he normally bats, Mitchell down to 7. They've got options, right?
They've got options. I still think someone like Matt Henry and Neil Wagner here would have been a better option than, but they've got the same issue that England have with having Broad and Anderson. Do you play them both? Do you play both Southey and Bolt each game? Trent Bolt arrived in the country on Monday, and he was playing a test match by Thursday. Was that quite the right move? I don't know. I think Wagner is another one who here would have been able to test the middle of the pitch, just give a different line of attack. The problem was that it was New Zealand that looked samey. We often talk about England's attack being 4 right-arm seam bowlers who bowl around 83 miles an hour, if that. This time, New Zealand looked a bit samey, actually, notwithstanding the Bolts are left armour. But their lines of attack and their lengths of attack, Carl Jameson was yesterday's point of difference. But it was a bit floaty today, wasn't it? And you just think that maybe Wagner bowling one of those classic Wagner 9-10 over spells where he just bangs it in and says to folks, what are you going to do? You're going to take it on or not, with the leg gullies and things like that. There was no attempt to change the narrative today, and I think that's partly the personnel.
And you can never really know for sure, but they might have just thought it was going to happen. When we rocked up here, we genuinely didn't think they'd start on time. It was so dark.
Gloomy.
Not only were the lights on, it was almost pea super stuff.
Yeah.
And to think that they, if you're a bowling attack as accomplished as New Zealand's, you would think that, well, if I pitch the ball up here, it's going to move. The issue was the ball was 66 overs old, and what you identified already about the relative movement that pace bowlers got through the test deeper into the use of a ball spoke to that. They needed the game to reach 80 overs. They tried to suck time out of the game late yesterday to give themselves a chance to regroup, but yeah, not to be. Continue.
On that, I was going to say, yesterday they weren't canny enough with the bat. After they lost that fifth, sixth wicket, when they went bang, bang, bang.
6 for 34 was the collapse.
That's right. So you look at firstly de Grandhomme and his brain fade. Great ball, yes, to Jameson, but then the last 3 wickets, the tail enders, even if they just bat a bit more time, if they add another 15, 20 runs, what they're doing is making that target for England that little bit more. It brings a second new ball into play, and the new ball created havoc in this test match. If they got a new ball with England needing, say, 30, 40 runs, I think there's every chance they could still have won the test match. But they didn't give themselves that chance. It reminded me a bit of Pakistan during the COVID series. Remember? When they had a big lead of 100 and something, and then they played a sort of slapdash way and set England 270 odd, wasn't it? And Joss Buttler and Chris Woakes got
277. It was the same target.
Right? Well, got England over the line.
It's the last time that England successfully chased was back in 2020, and it was the same target in and again, kind of a similar test match.
And not a second new ball. Again, you see, and had they batted and set, it's not the volume of runs. It's not that there's extra 40 runs makes a difference. Is the extra 40 runs makes it very unlikely you're going to get that in one ball, at which point you then get another ball. And in England, they can't, new balls are very important. You should love them, you should nurture them, you should care for them, you should yearn for them,
caress them.
You should caress them, and you should make damn sure you get at least 2 bites of that cherry when you're setting a target, if possible.
Hall of Fame, we're just going to pop everything about Joe Root in here. Well, I'll go via Ben Stokes' thigh pad, by the way, which I think requires some gratitude from England's perspective. He scored 10 leg byes, all of them were 2s off his bum and off his thigh pad. It worked for him.
Did he? Ben Foakes, did he?
Yeah, so you would say he should have made 42, not 32, because you think leg byes should go to the batter, don't you?
I do, yeah.
For another day. Joe Root passes 10,000 runs, the 14th man to achieve that. I've been at 5 of them, I've never seen a hat trick, but I've been at 5 of the 14 bringing them up, so quite like that. Anyway, Root gets there, he needed an even 100, does it in style, then helps out the fans. Now, at Lords and at England Test venues, if a game goes for more than 15, a day of play rather, goes for more than 15 overs, that's it. There's no refund.
You get a bit. Don't you get a bit of a refund for between 15 and 25 or something?
Okay, there might be. But broadly speaking, 15 overs is the magic number.
Yeah.
They needed 12 runs to win from the 14th over today, and Root, class act, steers the ball through the cordon with complete ease for 4, drives down the ground, class act again, and then finishes it with an emphatic pull shot out towards the tavern stand. So the punters all got their money back, and that might have been the second loudest roar we heard today behind Joe Root bringing up that 26 test ton. And Daniel, you've got the most magnificent nugget. Please let us know what it is.
Joe Root made it to 10,000 test runs when he scored his 100th run, and in so doing he got there in 31 years, 147 days, which is exactly the same number of years and days as Sir Alistair Cook. Literally exactly the same. They're joint youngest, but of course they're not joint youngest. Someone's got to be younger.
And?
Well, I found out from Alistair Cook that he was born at 1:55 p.m. Right? And we figure he scored that his 10,000
it was in the middle session at Durham on day 4 in 2016 against Sri Lanka.
Now, we also believe that Joe Root was born in the morning. And of course,
How did Cookie find that out? Has he spoke to him already?
I think he has, yeah. And he scored his 10,000th run around about 11:50. So...
sorry, Cookie.
I'm afraid Cookie has relinquished the record. He's actually, a little bit like when a politician concedes defeat on the night of an election. Cookie said, "Yeah, that's it. It's gone. The record."
He did say, didn't he, when we were speaking to him before? He goes, "I'm going to stop talking about it now."
That's right.
So he's no longer the youngest. Yet another Alistair Cook record falls. Speaking of records, I mean, Joe Root has now made 10,000 runs. What did Sachin make? 15,000 and change.
That's correct.
He's a decent chance of hauling that in.
Yeah. Let me just talk you through the maths for this, right? So he has done it, Joe Root, in 9 years, and I think it was 177 days, right? The first man to get to 10,000 runs inside 10 years.
Okay, right.
Right? So he's the quickest. It's the quickest there. Now, it doesn't take a great mathematician to work out that he's basically going at 1,000 runs a year, right? It doesn't mean every year he's getting 1,000 runs, but he's averaging that.
Yeah, 1,700 last year helps with that, yeah.
So, To get another 6,000 runs would take him to being 37 years old, 37 years and 147 days.
So long as he doesn't wane.
As long as he doesn't wane, that's very true. But actually, you tend to find, 32, 33, 34 can be really good years. So he might actually score quite a lot then, and then be in a state of denial for 2 or 3 years, which might be enough to get him there. He might be lured into it. I mean, Alistair Kirk, I thought he would be someone. Look, it's been 3 years since he retired. He could easily be in the 15,000 mark by now, but he said he basically lost the appetite for the fight, and that's because Alistair Kirk was always grappling with cricket. He has 3 or 4 shots, and he has to deny himself playing certain other shots to do that, and you've got to be motivated to do that, and I think he kind of lost the motivation. Root is a different player. He's more naturally gifted. He can score runs all around the place. So I don't think he's going to burn out in quite the same way. And he's not captain, and he's 31 and a bit.
Yeah, I think that's a big part of it. He's going to have a long post-captaincy career.
Yeah. So
this was the first test of that. And even the way that he spoke about Ben Stokes quite lovingly, that he wanted to give something back to Stokes.
Yeah, that's lovely, wasn't it?
Significant in the post-game press conference or press interview that Joe did with Athers on Sky and on the presentation. And yeah, it sort of feels like it's cliche to say liberated, but he looks that way. He looks like he's now ready and relishing the chance to be a member of the ranks. That's not always the way with former captains.
No, it isn't. I mean, he's a very generous guy in that respect. I don't think he's going to be sort of bitter about the way things ended either. And he was allowed to leave as opposed to be fired, which I think was very good, actually, by the England management, rather than say, oh, that's it, we've sacked him. There's all sorts of reasons why I think he's going to be able to have a bit more longevity. But there was something else about today. Wasn't it interesting watching the different way that Stokes and Root were in the interviews? As you say, Root felt liberated. Now it's Stokes who's now having to do the management speak.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure it sits really comfortably with him, to be honest with you, whereas Root feels freer to be himself again. Yeah, when you've been trying to explain away, was it 10 games without a win, 1 win in, was it 17?
I think that was the first win they've had in 10.
Yeah, you imagine having to do that time after time after time.
Which Root did.
Yeah, he did.
Always looked knackered, didn't he? You interview him after a test match in Australia and he looks like he was the tiredest man in the country.
Exactly.
It was a defining characteristic. His eyes were falling out of his head.
I think it's lovely to have him back, actually. And he's earned it. He's earned the right. And
today, a lovely photo from Phil Brown over there, who we've had on the show before.
Oh, Phil
Brownie has taken a glorious photo of Joe Root. Do you want to tell the secret of how you did it? Come on. Let's tell the secret, Brownie. So this is a shot.
Don't be shy, Brownie.
This will be a photograph that of Joe that you took today. How did you get the shot of Joe facing you directly as soon as he brought up Run 10,000?
Well, I remembered that in the past he's celebrated to his wife and family, who sit up in a box over in the grandstand. So basically, my brain just thought, why don't you go there? In case he does the same thing. And it did work out quite well, because he raised both arms and I was kind of blocked by the stumps but cropped them out. And yeah, very happy to get a picture of Joe Root looking pretty much straight at me, celebrating not only his century but his 10,000th run in Test cricket.
Can we use the photo as the artwork for this episode?
No, I don't think
Probably
so.
Not. We'll try.
I don't even own it. I work for someone. That's like saying
proper photo, right?
Can I come and live in your house?
I didn't mean it like that. I mean, like, do we have rights to the? Yeah, anyway, we can.
You can. I can put a watermark on it.
Put a watermark on it.
Of course.
Brownie, we love you. Thanks for coming and having a chat. All right, good on you, buddy. Now, I feel like I'm shooting him away there.
The legend that is Phil Brown.
We'll be at Knott's. Daniel's going to be with me for the daily shows next week. Jeff and I are doing a weekly show tomorrow about, among other things, Greg Barclay's interview on TMS the other day, which was fucking bewildering. And what else we got? We're going to do the weekend show, story time, relatively early in the week. I think Jeff's doing a story time we've brought up between times. There's a lot of stuff on the Final Word feed. You already know that. You listen to the show. This has been Adam Collins and Daniel Norcross here at Lord's. England victorious by 5 wickets. We'll do it all again next week.
Goodbye.